Okay, it's 12 o'clock on the dot. We still have people joining us. They'll be trickling in, but we just wanted to say welcome. My name is Marissa Warnock. I am the newest member of the Partnerships Division and the Program Manager of Cooperating Associations. So welcome to today's webinar on submitting your annual report. We're thrilled to have you join us, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. We hope this training will refreshing you on how to submit the annual report and open up communication with the cooperating association staff, and so that we could be a resource for you and make sure that we answer your questions. Today, we'll be diving into submitting the 2023 annual reports. We'll talk about getting all the documents together and submitting them in POCMS. Just a reminder, if you are behind on submitting annual reports, the information we're sharing today is not just for 2023, it's the same information that you would use for all the other years as well. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation. You'll be muted just about the whole time. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end as well. So if you have very specific questions about your co-op, we ask you that you please hold off on those right now. Please reach out to us separately or at a separate time so that we can take that time to answer your questions. We want to try to keep this information as relevant as possible to as many people as possible. We are recording right now, and so we hope to share this as well as other resources in the next week or two. Lastly, we'd like to say, if you are a new CAL, please send us an email so we can connect. We are like to keep our roster up to date. And finally, we will send out a post-webinar survey that'll go out today, this afternoon. So please complete it and let us know how we can best support you. So without further ado, oh wait, actually not quite there yet. Our agenda, I briefly covered that, is we're going to go over the forms that you need to submit the annual report. We ask that you come prepared with those today. If you weren't able to get them, then we're going to show you how to get them. And then we're going to do a hands-on demonstration of POCMS with our Best Park Association, which is kind of our dummy account, to walk you through how to submit all this information. And then lastly, we'll have questions. We'll take your questions. We will also take questions throughout, so please use the chat. We have staff here, as well as myself, who will be answering the questions as best we can. The tricky questions that we aren't able to answer, we will address those at the appropriate time and at the question section. So we will do our best to answer everyone's questions. Okay, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our analyst for cooperating associations, Bree Grossman.
So most of you know me or have met me before in one of our mini outings. But we're going to dive right into this because I know your guys' time is valuable and we're trying to make this all fit in on a lunch break. So just to jump right into it, these are the required documents that you want to have together and ready to go when you are prepared to submit your annual report. Again, we are going to be showing you 2023's report, but this will go, of course, for any previous year if you're trying to get those in as well. So just a quick overview of these. We have the upcoming annual report. That's the first attachment. And then we have the report on the previous year's annual report. So those are kind of like our separate stuff. And then we jump into actual like forms. And so I wanted to cover this. So there are certain forms that all nonprofits must complete in order to operate in California. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a place for everyone to upload that information. And so going down this list, most of you guys are familiar with the IRS 990. These are the federal filings that is required. And then we're going to jump into the Franchise Tax Board 199s, and then obviously the RRF1, which is your state filings. And then we have our contractual requirements, which are the approval of sales items, and board roster and certificate of insurance. So we'll actually kind of jump into those going forward, starting with the annual plan. So this is an example of the sample annual plan that we provide to our partners. We don't have a dedicated form necessarily or template that is set up for this, but we wanted to leave it so that you and your Cal and your partner, you guys can work together to make a report that best works for you and your partnership. So this was based off of a bunch of research that we did to, try to capture as much information, but there may be more information that you want to capture in there, but that's the start. Okay. And then the next one will be a report on that year, right? So we have a future looking plan for 2024, but now we want to jump into our review of 2023's annual report. So moving forward, we're going to look at what that might look like. And like I said, this is different for everybody. I actually took this from one of our partners. I was going through all of our annual reports and I saw this and thought this was a fantastic example. So right here, you'll see that this is from Poppy Reserve, Mojave Desert Interpretive Association, and they have done a great job here. So what it looks like they've done is they took their previous year and they just went in and edited it and made notes on these are the things that happened and these are the things that, were, obviously I just screenshot it so you don't see the full document, but it's very, very detailed and super helpful. And this is great for you guys, right? You want to be able to look back on these and have this kind of record. So, okay, we're covering these briefly. Moving on to the next attachment. We're gonna, actually, moving on to all of the other attachments, all of the requirements based on being a nonprofit, right? So this is where I go when I am verifying the status of a cooperating association. And I also wanted to share this with you as well, because this is a great tool for when you're trying to search these sort of things, if you don't have it readily available. So, for example, I'm not going to jump onto the website and show you this, but we will provide you this link and also more information. But you'll see on the next page, I have screenshotted what it looks like when you actually put in an organization and what it pulls up so that you can see the types of documents you can pull from this. So this was from, I think I looked up Monterey State Historic Park Association. And on here, there's renewal filings. So you can see 2023 renewal filings are in there. If I would have clicked on that, it would pull up their RRF1, which then also has either a 990 attached to it or a CTTR, which is the California Treasurer's Report. It just depends on the amount of sales and funds and things that you guys have. So I won't go too deep into that detail because that's further on, but this is just a great tool for you all to be able to pull those documents together. I do recommend, obviously, having all of these documents somewhere saved, but how things go. It'll be someone has it on their computer and then another has it on theirs. But that's why we really want to utilize POCMS as the hub for your cooperating association. So that way you can share that login with those folks and they can come in and they can review this information as well, as your board turns over or whatnot. Okay, so this is that tool. We're going to jump forward now to the more of the contractual requirements. This is just an example I pulled again from another report, but this is another thing that we do not have a standardized form for, but we do require that you get all sales items, anything that you're selling on behalf of state parks or, to earn money for state parks needs to be approved by your CAL. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a super complicated ordeal, but they should at least know what you're selling and then also have input on that. And that just helps us from, having anything in the visitor center that maybe doesn't, comply with our mission or whatnot. So it's more or less for that. But so this is where you'll have that attachment. Also, just throwing this out there, bonus points if you can guess which visitor center that is, because I do not know. But I stole it from a previous training and I bet one of you guys does. So anyway, moving forward, we're going to look at the final, oh no, sorry, the second to last contractual requirement, which is your board roster. Here I stole it from Monterey State Historic Park Association, and like it's very simple, just the list of their board members. I do want to point out that this is public information, so you might not want to include all of your contact information per individual, but maybe have contact information for the responsible, or the either like the president or the ED, something like that. Just have a contact information on there. But this is where this is a side note, extra side note. This is also, when you're making this board roster, I highly suggest also making a second board roster with all of the contact information on it that you provide to your CAL directly, because that's what they need in order to issue your complimentary passes. So that is not required in the annual report. This is a complete side note, but I know all of you guys like those complimentary passes. And if you can get that information to your CAL as early as possible, the better, right? So, okay, this is the board roster. Now to our final contractual attachment that we need to make sure to have. We have the certificate of insurance. And this is the only, we only accept a cord form. So it has to look like this. It has to be a certificate of insurance. And also I want to make sure that when you're uploading it, you're uploading the right year. So like this one covers 23 into 24. So that would be my appropriate one to upload. So those are all the attachments that you want to have ready to go when you jump into POCMS. But before we do move on to going into POCMS, is there any questions about the required forms?
Okay, Bree, we got one here. It says the RRF1 includes a board roster. Can we pull that as a single sheet to provide as our board roster?
Sure. It's just we need it as a separate document just for our purposes. But yes, I do understand that some 990s or RFF ones will include that, and that's super helpful. But this is just for us to quickly reference when we need to. And it's just easier rather than like digging through all the forms. So yes, I understand that. And you're more than welcome to just snap that out and save it as another PDF. And that was the other thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out is all of these documents do need to be saved as PDF, because POCMS will not accept it unless they're in PDF form.
Okay,
Are
that's
there
good
any
to
other
know.
questions?
People are raising their hands at the moment. We'll unmute people at the very end, but for now, if you could just use the chat for your questions, that would be the best way to keep control of the meeting.
I have a feeling we'll have a fair amount of time at the end to kind of go over more details, because we're going to just jump into POCMS here and kind of walk through that. And I have a feeling there's going to be more questions on that as well. But we will obviously go into more detail about these forms and these required attachments, because as we walk through, you'll see where I upload those and yada, yada. So is there any
Okay.
other questions related to that before I do move forward?
We'll have a chance to, okay. When do we need to update sales items? They change often.
Well, that's a good thing. If they change, it's anytime you have a new item. We do only require it once a year, but if you guys have an ongoing kind of like, I don't know how you guys handle your sales items there, but like, let's say you have an email with your CAL and you're like, hey, these are the new items we're bringing in. Is this okay? That's fine. Just copy and paste all those emails into a document or something. It just depends on how you guys do it and whatever works for you. So that's what I want to make sure is clear, is however you guys do that approval, is as long as it's easy and clear, that's good for me.
Okay, next question. For the board roster, can associations list the general contact email for the association, or does it need to be individual specific?
Nope, that's what I recommend. I recommend having a general association contact, like email or number, and having that on that board information because, like I said, that is public documents. But also, we do need their individual information for the complimentary passes. So that's a different, you'll just email that directly to your CAL. That won't be put into any reports.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have any more questions. We can keep going on. Thanks, Bree.
All right. Okay, so we are now, I'm going to take over. I'm going to share my screen and we are going to walk through submitting an annual report. This is where I shift into my president of Best Park Association role and hopefully make this all make sense. Okay, so you all can see my screen now. Make sure as I walk through. Okay, so in here, you will see that we have my contract number here. So I only have one contract with state parks, but some of you may have multiple. So make sure you're reporting on the contract number that, you know, is corresponding with the year you're reporting on. So I've already added a report just for time's sake. So I'm going to go into a previously added report and edit it as we walk through. But I just wanted to point out while we're on this opening page, you will come in here and you would click this add button and that would add a draft report. So that's where you get this down here. And so let's say you just added it. It would say this. I would click on here to edit. Okay. So now we're into the report. And here, this is a nice little section where it breaks down the different parts of the report. We do have 5 parts, and I will walk through them individually, but you go through and you're going to edit each part, but make sure as you're editing them, you save them too. Here, I'm reporting on my 2023 fiscal year, so I'm putting in here 2022-23 fiscal year. Here's my dates, my start and end date. You may not have a calendar January 1 to December 31st fiscal year, but whatever yours is, just put it there. That's what, and then also click the fiscal year that best represents the year you're in. Okay, so now we're going to come down to the actual revenue. I'm gonna get my notes here so I can get more into that. All right, so here you're going to want to put in all the money that is, or not money, I should say, all the support that is directly related to the work as a co-op. I also want to point out, I know we do have some partners on this call or this webinar that have other agreements other than a co-op agreement. And so your reports may look slightly different and you do have different reporting requirements based on your authorities. So I would say double check with your analyst and or Cal, and they can help you with that, but it should look relatively similar. So please stay with us and hang in. So here you'll see they have the Cooperating Association, PRC 513. This is where we're going to put in all that information. So we have the contributions. I just kind of made up some numbers, so play along with me. But you would put in donated goods and services, any kind of grants that you might have gotten, and then it would come down here to program income. Everything totals up on the right. Here, if you have fee-based interpretive programs, you can put that in there. Make sure you're tracking all the money you're making from special events. This is where we allow you guys to really break down how the money you're using and services, donated time, all that is how that is being distributed within the park, right? So that's why we have this broken down the way it is. You'll also see here as we scroll down, we have sales. And then we have here, it says this will match the IRS 990, Part 8, Line 10C. And these do match up. So I do understand that not everyone is required to report or file a 990. So some of you guys may do the EZ or even a postcard and these won't match up. But do the best that you can based on your financials, so the books you keep. All right, so we're going to go down a little bit further. We're going to go into expenses. So this would be financial aid to DPR. Let's say you are providing, I don't know, like part of an employee's salary. Like you can put some of that in here. And financial aid to other organizations. So like I said before, if your co-op also supports, let's say, a national park or a local recreation area or other things like that, that's where you would want to break out that, so we can kind of see what's actually being spent on parks versus your other endeavors. Service aid, other supplies, salary and related expenses. So let's say you have staff, that may not be relevant to everybody, but for those of you that it is, make sure you're inputting it here. Facility and equipment. Some of you guys are renting buildings or, things like that. So like, make sure you're capturing all that information in here. It's very valuable and very important, right? Like, we want to get the whole story. So this helps us tell it. Total expenditures, and that all comes here, and we come down here, we kind of break it down some more. We got our total assets, total liabilities, and net assets. So this should all kind of match your plan or your IRS 990 or other financials. Make sure though, like I said before, make sure when you're doing each part at the very bottom, you click save. If you do not click save, all that work will be in vain. You will have to go back and re-input it all. So save it, and then it'll bring you back to this page, right? Now we're ready to go into part 2, which is programs. So let me get part 2 started. Okay, so here is this is more or less, not more or less, this is directly related to your support of state parks. So leave out all that other support you might do with other organizations. We are only interested in what you do for state parks in this programmatic area. And so direct funding full, for example, like I said before, with that interpretive specialist position, right? Let's say your organization funds an entire interpretive position in that district, you will put full funding, right? And obviously that would not be $3,000, but like, you would put in whatever contribution that was. And or let's say you only fund part of that position, like you fund half or even a quarter of it, whatever it is. You can do partial funding, and then you can total value of the contribution, right? Same thing goes for donated services, donated goods. Just make sure that you're capturing those within what area they fall, right? Because we have operations, we have maintenance, we have cultural resources, but we know you guys do more than just support our interpretive and educational programs. So that's why we want to make sure that we're showing where the different support is going. So take the time to really focus on that. Also, I do recommend, for those of you who do have, really robust programs, this box right here is a great place to add some more notes, but it's very, it's limited to a certain amount of text, So I encourage, it's not required, but I do encourage you attach more information about your programs, share as much information with us as you want. We will never say no to having more information. So if you guys have like a program manual or a program pamphlet even, or examples of, new flyers or something you're doing, that would be a great place to put it, So this is just a great place to attach those sort of things. Moving on, now we're going to go down to 2B, which is sales operations. And now, before we didn't capture this, but we understand how valuable and how dynamic visitor centers and, gift shop sales can be. So we wanted to make sure to capture that in our 973. And so here's where that would go. Again, these numbers are just made up, so don't read into any of it, but you have the value of your inventory, and then you have your gross sales, cost of goods sold, Also, you might have a cost of operations. Do you have a store manager, or do you have to rent a location, or are you doing online sales and you're having to pay for, or things like that? Just think of all the ways that you guys are contributing. And then net income is obviously what you guys made on your sales. We're going to move down now to our community and donor engagement. Here is where we kind of track more or less like your volunteer work. So here you're gonna check what is applicable, right? Not everything pertains to your group and what you guys do, but let's say you guys have a volunteer program. You want to, and mind you, this is for volunteers outside of VIPP. So these are if you run your own volunteer program and have your own volunteers, this is where that information would go. You're going to check volunteers and then quantity. So you may not know how many volunteers you have, but maybe you track how many hours they've done. Like here, I said we had a total of 897 volunteer hours. And the rate, I think for 2023, I wrote it down somewhere. It's like 2349 or something. I will definitely have that information available for you guys, though, when we follow up with the resources. Oh yeah, 3349. It says right there. I'm silly. So that is the value of an hour of volunteer service, right? So you got to do your math, add it up. But that changes every year. So make sure you check with the independent sector to find out what that is. Back to publications. Let's say you paid for brochures or a new book to be published for the visitor center. That we need to capture that, right? So make sure to put that in there. Or like media outreach or marketing. You know, a lot of our partners do social media outreach and do a lot of uh, kind of like the more fun stuff that we don't necessarily have the capacity to do. And make sure you're capturing that. Like, you know, donor, I mean, most of us know how much time it takes to do any type of social media, right? So being on there and monitoring a partner's social media account can be a lot of work, and make sure that we're capturing that. So that's what I want to make sure we get. Um, Also, we like to know how many people have you reached out to at outreach events. Let's say you guys hosted a new um, gold mining days or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing out an event, but it was an event to bring new people into the park. And I mean, it may be hard to like capture the exact amount, but like get a good estimate of what you guys are doing. It's a good opportunity to show that there. Also, we have you can put in donors, membership. So let's say you have a membership program. How many members do you have? How much does that bring in every year? Special events. I know a lot of you guys depend on special events for your fundraisers, and this is a great place to put it. And some aren't even necessarily fundraisers, but they're events, and that's getting people into the parks, right? That doesn't necessarily have to bring money in, but bringing people into the parks, that counts. So like here, I just put first day hikes or volunteer appreciation event or cleanup days, right? So just make sure you're putting the further detail in there because it does help us. Best Park Association, unfortunately, we don't have a major donor program, so I didn't click it. I didn't add any information there. We also don't have an endowment. Maybe someday when we, get a little bigger. But that pretty much captures what we have in programs. So I'm going to just double check. I'm going to scroll back up, make sure I captured everything I wanted to capture. We're not doing any capital development programs or projects, so I don't have anything to report there. Okay, so everything looks good. I'm going to go back down and I'm going to save. I know I'm going to beat that till the horse is dead, but
Hey,
save.
hey, Bree, we actually have a
Mhm.
lot of questions on this section. Would you mind if I jump to a
Sure,
couple of these while we're here?
absolutely.
Okay. One of the questions is, what is service aid to DPR?
Service aid to DPR. Okay, let me get my notes so I can actually read it directly. Um,
It might have been on the first page. We're on the second
um,
page here, so
yeah. Oh, it's on the first page.
it might have been there. Yeah.
Service to state parks. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, let me go back. Part one,
Yes.
financial report. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, let me pull that. Um, so we were asking about service aid.
Mm-hmm. I think you already
Um,
covered it, and I think it was just a clarifying question.
yeah, I want to make sure that I'm clarifying it correctly because
Okay.
it does matter. I believe it's just okay. No, I don't know why I'm doubting myself because I know the answer to this.
You know
So
this.
basically, it's if you're providing a service. So it wouldn't necessarily be fun money, but let's say your team did a weed eradication day or a invasive species eradication day, that would be considered service aid to depart to DPR.
Right.
That
Thank you.
I hope that answers that.
Okay, next question along the similar lines. Someone has a fund, they fund a trail building or organization to build and maintain the trails in the park. This is not direct funding. How do we report this?
Um, I would show that. This is a good one because, like, you got me thinking about this because technically it is supporting the park, right? It's just not directly going to state parks. You're paying a contractor, is what I'm assuming, to do work within the park on behalf of parks. Um, I would capture that in your support of state parks because ultimately that is the case. If you were supporting an organization that did trail work on state parks and other trails outside of state parks, I would then maybe identify that and just be like, hey, they do help us on our part or our property, but they also do other properties as well. I don't know. It's just a make sure it's clear is all that I want to know.
Okay. Next question. What does donated services mean? And they also had a question about volunteer hours. Oh, donated
Okay.
services right here, I think.
Donated goods
Yeah.
and services. So that would be like donating like food for a volunteer event or donating let's say you bought shirts for all the volunteers or something. You know what I mean? Like that would be a donated good because it's not necessarily a monetary check or cash or something that you're putting into a contingent fund, but it is something that the park needs. So that's how you can kind of think about that.
Okay. And then they said they also had volunteer hours. I think they were just curious about that. Can you expand on like how we think of volunteer hours?
Okay, so first we want to make sure that we understand the difference between VIP volunteers and cooperating association volunteers because they are two different entities. VIP is under Rachel, and a lot of our cooperating associations do depend on VIP volunteers. So that can kind of get a little hairy in there where they think maybe they're volunteers, but no, they are actually state parks volunteers. So you would not be reporting on those volunteers. But if you run a volunteer program yourself and you have, duty statements for those volunteers and they have specific jobs and whatnot, that's what you're going to capture there. You want to make sure you're capturing, let's say you have 4 volunteers that operate the visitor center, make sure you're tracking those hours that are put in there. Um, and things like that. I'm not sure if I've captured that question, but if I can help, clarify that more, let me know.
Okay. We're doing the best we can here. So
You
if
know,
if you
we can
have
always
further
follow up
questions,
again.
yeah, we can address them later and you can put more in the chat. And then I think you did somewhat address this. Someone asked, where do we list money spent to support state park volunteers? So I think that would
Oh,
be under here
that
expenses,
would be that
like
would be
buying
just
food, hats, uniforms, things
okay.
like
So
that.
like if you're buying stuff for the VIP program at your park, that would be donated goods and services. So we would put that here. If you are paying state parks, like if you gave state parks, okay, I was gonna say you gave state parks a check for to go buy food, which I know state parks can't do, so that's why we have you guys do it. So I'm trying to think of a different way of doing this. So let's say you gave state parks a check for something to support those volunteers, then it would be a contribution that way. But if you're donating a good or services for those volunteers, then you would capture it there. Hopefully that
Okay.
helps.
It's very nuanced. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. We will, there's a couple more questions here. We'll get to them, I think, later. And so I'll hand it back over to you. I'll hand the reins back to you. Thank you,
Okay.
Bree.
Yeah, no problem. So where were we? We were going into, I think,
You were
part 3.
saving.
Oh,
Yeah.
we were saving part 2, right? Okay. So, well, this is back to part 1. But also, as we keep jumping back and forth, this is an opportunity to teach you all or show you all that you can edit throughout this. And this is also what I was going to talk about at some point in the future, but might as well now, is if you wanted to build this report collaboratively within your cooperating association, let's say you have committees that do different things, you can share that one login you have, and you can leave it on saved, and they can come in and edit their section, right, or their part. So this is a nice, like, having this ability to kind of come in and edit things as you want. So just remember that it's an option. So if you're like, let's say we have something at the beginning of the year, but you're like, I'm not going to have the other part of that report until later, you can go start it now and then just log back in when you have the other stuff. That way it's just there. But back on to our regular scheduled programming. Part 3, we're going to go into organizational health. Now, part 3 is a optional section, but it is so valuable to use to, like, measure yourself against other nonprofits, right? These are kind of nonprofit practices, or best practices, I should say. But obviously not all of this will pertain to your organization if not, right? So just kind of go through here, and back to what I was saying previously in the training or in the webinar was this POCMS acts as your hub for all of your stuff, right? Like, we want to be able to have as much of your information in one place so that when you come in and review it, you can be like, oh yeah, our articles of incorporation were last revised in whenever, or our bylaws or whatnot. And mind you, I have to say this, contractually, to be a cooperating association, if you do change your bylaws or articles of incorporation, you have to let us know before you do so, because it could alter the authorities. But that's beside the point. But here is just kind of where you would go through, and let's say you currently have these, you click it, right? Or like Best Park Association, we're planning to do a strategic plan, and we're planning to have it out by spring 2025. So I made sure that I clicked the plan, also added some notes, right? Let's say you don't have employees, so you might not need an employee manual. So just leave it blank. Or maybe you don't have lease agreements, leave it blank. But this is an optional place for you to just kind of track what you guys have. So, like, also we have, IRS 990, which most of you guys will be including anyway. Volunteer policy and training. So, like, that's back to what I was talking about. If you have your own volunteer program, make sure that you were clicking on this and you can note when the last time you provided, or something like that. You know what I mean? Staffing plan, like I said, if you don't have staff, it doesn't matter. And continue. But there's a long list of these, right? So just go through and click what pertains to your organization and then save. Now we're moving on to part 4. We're almost there. This is the shortest part of the section, or of the report, but it's probably the most valuable, at least in my eyes. This is our annual plan section. So remember when we were covering the documents that we wanted to or have prepared for attaching to this report, this is where we start those attachments. So first, the most important thing to understand is all of this work will be done outside of online, right? You and your partner, or you and your CAL, will develop these plans beforehand, right? So you're going to have those done, have them ready to go, and then come in here and upload them. So for example, I will come in here and add. So I'm going to upload the 2024 annual plan, and I'm going to save that, even though I already have it in here. Let's attach another one. I'm going to make sure I got my report on 2023's annual plan. Okay, that's in there. Now I'm going to make sure, because mind you, these red asterisks, if you do not upload here, you will not be able to save or submit your report, because that's required. So done, got that information in there. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now we're on to part 5. This is the legal compliance, and this is where the rest of those attachments come into play, right? So we did our first 2 attachments on part 4. Now we're in part 5, and we're going to make sure we have that folder ready, and we are going to upload our IRS 990 filing. And I'm going to upload my Form 199. Let me make sure I got my 990 in here. Okay. Mind you, I was gonna say, I don't know if you guys caught that. Let me put my 199 and say, I'm not sure if you guys caught this, but what I find to be helpful, and I'm not sure how you guys want to do yours, but before I do go into submit my reports, I make a folder that is 2023 annual report attachments or something. So it's very clear, like this. So I don't have to go digging around looking for stuff. It's all in one place. And I even numbered it just so I know where it goes. So this is just another example of that. Let's say I'm going to put my 199 in there. All right. So 3, 4. Let me put in this. Oh, Ralph, wait. Oh, I got to put in my RRF1. Can't forget that. Got to put that in here. Okay, so we got that in. Mind you, you might see that these don't have red asterisks. So it's saying it's not required. But the point is, if you're doing it, put it in here. It's just best practice, right? And also, some of these are just not required because not all of them pertain to every organization, but it may be required for your organization. So let's say if you do have sales tax or property tax you need to report on, you need to include that. So that's where this will go. And also, let's say you have to do an independent audit or review or compilation. That's all based off of your revenue, right? That would go here too. So that is, you will know whether or not you need to input those things. But for the most part, I'm kind of covering the general, what everyone does. So my group doesn't do a raffle registration. I know a lot of you guys do. So that would be where you put your raffle registration. Like I said, I don't have one to upload, but we did just submit our statement of information this year. And most of you probably know this is due every other year, I think it is now, but ours was just recently due. So I made sure to include it as well. I'm going to just go and see, upload it. Here we go. There's my statement of information. Boom. Okay, now we're coming down to our contractual requirements. And you can kind of see it says 5C contractual. I did get my approval of sale items in here, so I'm going to make sure that I get, credit for that. And then we're going to jump to the board roster. I kind of already showed you those documents before, so we won't go into too detail, but we'd attach that here, and then I attach my certificate of insurance. We do have this. I did not include this as an attachment in what we were covering because most of you guys will have this done when we take care of your renewal. But some organizations may have their certification clause expire in between, but we will notify you of when that is because we have a reminder. So the certification clause is something that's every individual or group that contracts with the state of California, that's just part of the contracting language. So that we don't worry too much about, but it is required and we will let you know when we need it. All right, so I've made sure I got all of my attachments in here. I'm going to go to save. Oh boy. Oh, it worked. We're in business. Okay, so I've already run through this with my board. They know what I've already reported, so I am ready to certify and submit this, right? So what I'm going to do now that I'm ready to submit, I will click on this very small box. I hope you all can see it. This very small box right here that has a little red asterisk next to it. It says, I certify that the information contained in this report is true and correct to the best of my knowledge. And so by doing that, you're basically saying you did your best. Just kidding. But you're going to go in and you're going to click submit. And that means that my 2023 annual report is now submitted. So as the partner, I have done my due diligence. I have done what is required of me. Boom, right? So now what is going to happen is when you submit your report, it automatically generates a notification email that will go to your CAL informing them that, hey, so-and-so association has updated or has uploaded their current, or it'll tell you, actually, I don't think it tells you the year that's updated, but they'll let you know that a report has been submitted and that it needs your approval, right? So then they will go in and then they will review it. And what I tried, and like this isn't a CAL training, but I just want to point out to our partners that are here that Not all of our CALs are nonprofit experts, maybe like when it comes to the governance of how nonprofits work, but they are the expert on your partnership, right? They know the ins and outs of what your programs are and things like that. So they're the best to review this information to make sure that it coincides with what they know to be true, right? And so once they go through and review it and everything looks good to them, they would then click that it's been reviewed, and then that sends it to me, and then I get to approve it at that point. So that is from start to finish how to submit an annual report. I trying to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything before I open it up for questions, but we have 15 minutes. So let's see if we can make the best of this 15 minutes and get some questions answered.
Okay, well done, Bree. We do have a lot of questions. And I did want to, you did
Stop
a
sharing.
brief, oh no, you actually, I think, why don't you keep
Oh,
sharing? Because some
okay,
of
because
these
we're gonna have
questions might be
questions.
about that. I know
Okay.
you're not going to be able to do everything, I think, because you've submitted it, but you could still, some of the fields will be locked, but it's still good to see.
Yes.
I did want to give a shout out. You just briefly mentioned the cows. We do have a number of cows on the call, and after the co-op submits it, it will go to you. And so please, please make a point to approve it when you can, but make it a priority. Sometimes we're still happy to send out co-op passes if they've submitted, if they've done their part, but we do want to make sure that you're still doing your part and signing those. We have a number who have uh, they've been submitted and we need them to be signed off. So we'll be following up in another email just to the CALs about that. But that's still an important thing. Okay, so we have lots of questions here. Let's see here. Oh, your screen went blue.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
okay. Um, there was a question here about unpaid interns. I answered it directly in the chat. Basically, I think the question was about, are interns considered volunteers? I'll take this question. I confirmed with our volunteers and parks coordinator, and she says that as long as the interns are unpaid and they are working for their DPR intern, then they're considered a volunteer and they'll be a part of the VIP program. If they are a intern for the cooperating association, I think that is up to the cooperating association to decide if they are considered a volunteer or not. Okay, here's a question for Bree. Does DPR sign off on bylaws, and do bylaws have to be updated periodically?
We do not sign off on them, but in order to be a cooperating association, to be authorized under PRC 513, you have to indicate in your articles of incorporation that you are directly supporting the state park that you're supporting. So I mentioned that earlier just because I do know that it is super valuable to review and update those articles of incorporation and or bylaws, because it is valuable to kind of keep with the times. But we just need to be notified of the changes, and as long as it doesn't affect the language in there that says you support state parks directly, we will be okay, and that shouldn't affect anything. As for how often we should be updating these things, I don't have like a clear answer on that. I can definitely look into more best practices on that and go into further detail in the future. But for the most part, what's most important to us is we just need to be notified if you guys are intending to change it, and or if you've already changed it and maybe didn't notify us, make sure we are in the loop so that we can update our records.
Okay. Somebody asked the question. I tried to respond to it, but I feel like my response was lacking depth. Bree, what if the certificate of insurance expires before the annual report is completed?
Um, okay, so if before it's completed, okay, so let's say it expired in April or something, and you're submitting it in May.
Yeah.
I Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say my
Yes.
preference would be to get a updated one, because if it's already past due, then you should have access to the newest one.
But it's for the
But it's,
report that was for, like, the
so that's true.
2023 report. I think I would
Yeah.
still want it to just be for 2023.
Yeah. So, however, it's mostly covering the year that you're recording for. That's how I
Yeah.
would just say it.
That's what I was thinking, like, the bulk of the year. If we're
Yeah.
starting, like, May, if your whatever, your year starts June 1st and your, certificate of insurance ends in July, well, you should have a new one for July and the remaining of the year. So I would just say the bulk of the year. We wanna know that you're insured for
Yep.
most of the year there.
So I was going to say, here's my example, and I'm sharing it with y'all, but let me zoom in a little bit more so you guys can see it a little easier. But yeah, I literally just put mine to expire on 5/31 because obviously this was a dummy record and I just made it up. But yeah, so whatever's covering most of the year, right? Because I'm recording on 2023 and the majority of it 2023. So I think that's correct.
Okay, great. Another question is, this is a POCMS question. Is there a way to delete mistakenly saved duplicate reports?
Not yet.
Okay.
I definitely, while I was in here messing around, preparing for this webinar, I did try to do that as the partner. And there is no way. We've tried to do it as the headquarters. It's something we need to go into the actual software programming to have done, and we have a long list for them. So I have added it to the list so that hopefully that will be in the near future updates.
Okay. Someone else is saying they're having trouble loading the program section and they get an application error. They've tried different browsers and disabled the ad blocker. Do you have any other suggestions?
Okay, so that I think I
If that's
know
in
which one.
permissions.
So when you go to this point and you're clicking edit or add, is that where it's giving you the issues, or is it like when you're coming in here and you're going to attach this? Is it just, sorry,
I'd have to,
I'm asking for
it's okay.
details.
I'll have to wait for the response then.
I was gonna say, I think I have an email with this person, so I will definitely be in touch and we
Okay.
will touch base on that because that is something I'm still trying to figure out. But
Okay.
that's definitely, I think, only happening with yours. So hopefully
Okay.
we can fix that.
Um, Here's another question. I think this is a good question. Someone else asked a similar question. They've been assigned two contracts with two
Mhm.
different contract codes. And they look identical. How do they know which form to complete? Like, how do they know which contract is for which
Okay,
um,
so this
year?
could be, I think this question could go two ways, so I'm going to try to answer both of them. So
Okay.
if you are looking at it, and let's say you are just a cooperating association and you have two contracts assigned to you because you had one previously that expired, but maybe had outstanding reports or that were waiting to get submitted, that will stay editable and that will still be viewable for you to mess with, right? So that can be confusing for some partners because they go in and they see the Z16 dash da 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 contract number, and then they'll see the P22CO da 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 da. And for the most part, the Z number is going to be the old number because that's just the old iteration of how we did things. But what is most important for you to know is you want to submit the report. The year that you're reporting on needs to coincide with the term of that contract. So let's say you're reporting on a 2018 year, right? And that 2018 year fell within the term of your old contract. You would want to submit that under the old contract. But let's say you're doing 2023's report, that's going to be under your current contract, the one that is currently active. And what we are working on doing, and this is another thing that's been in the program updates, is we are trying to make it so that your current contract shows up first when you do go in, but also we're trying to freeze the previous uh, contract if it's complete. So let's say you guys have done all your reporting and everything, we then turn it to a terminated contract, which just makes it so it's not editable. It's just a frozen contract, but all the documents, all the information is still there. It's just you won't accidentally go in and add a report to it. So hopefully that will help with that confusion. Now to the second maybe option of that question is if you have a cooperating association agreement and a co-management agreement or operating agreement, I should say, and those do have different authorities which they need to report under. So this is something that we are still trying to work out in the partnerships division and how we want to do those reports. I know we have, so like for those groups that do have two, we have a different annual report form, and theirs is a combo report form. So it's supposed to have, the five or yeah, 513. So it'll have a column for 513, and then it'll have a column for the 50, 80, 42. So that's where you're going to break out your differences. But we haven't quite figured out which contract you're going to be reporting that under because it's not showing up. So, like, let's say you do it under your co-management agreement, it's not reflecting that onto the cooperating association agreement, but it should technically be covered because it's in a combo report. So I know only a couple of you guys have that situation, and if you do have further questions on that, we can go into it. But these are things that we're working on still, and we'll hopefully have a fix for that soon. Hopefully I answered that question.
I think so. Okay, we do have a couple more questions. We are getting short on time. One of the questions, I don't want to put you on blast here, Bree, but was about the park passes, that some people haven't received park passes yet. Would you kind of elaborate about what kind of scenarios might have led to their not receiving their park passes yet?
Okay, so the number one reason folks have not received their park passes is because that group is not in compliance. If your group does not have their current annual reports in, and like I said, or like we were saying, the 31st of this month is when the 2023 annual reports will be due. So we only were reviewing up to 2022. So if you have all of your reports in up to 2022, then you should have received your passes. If for some reason you know that all of those reports are in and you are in good standing with the state, let's say you're not delinquent with the, Attorney General's office or things like that, you should have your passes. And if you do not, please let me know immediately and I will fix that for you. If you have not received your passes, though, it is probably one of those situations. You either have an outdue or a past due a report that's needing to get in, or maybe you're delinquent with the state because they haven't gotten your filings. It's one of those things. And I'm more than happy to, touch base with folks if you have more questions on what's needed. But for the most part, CALs should know where they stand on whether their groups are receiving passes or not.
And that was part of the reason why we had this training, because the information that we shared today for the 2023 annual report is good for the same information. You're going to have to go get all those same documents. You could do it in the same way for past years and hopefully help you submit those past documents and get up to speed. Okay, I think we just have time for maybe one more question. This one I think I'm going to go to an easier one because I think the question I had in mind, it might be a bit lengthy. If we have an older report submitted, how do we get that approved?
That is where Marissa was speaking earlier about our CALs need to be on top of getting in and doing that. Sometimes I have noticed sometimes the notification emails don't always get sent. So that could be an issue. So if there's something like that happening, I would just reach out to your CAL and be like, hey, we submitted this. We're just waiting for your review. And if for some reason it is waiting for the approval, that means like it's already been certified by the CAL, then that's on me and I need to get in there and do that. But for the most part, I go in regularly and check that. So I try to catch those as often as possible.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
So you're talking about a terminated agreement, but
That's what I was going to say. It seems like.
we'll touch base about that because that's something we're working on as well.
Okay. So we are going to, okay, I think actually we have one. Well, no, I want to respect everyone's time, so we want to end on time here. Um, we will try to answer all of the questions that we received in the chat. We'll try and respond to them individually. We'll also be available after Bree and I will hang back for a few extra minutes if you do have extra questions you'd like to ask when we weren't able to answer them. But I would just like to take a moment to thank our subject matter expert and customer service oriented analyst, Bree Grossman. She did a really great job answering all of our questions and putting this presentation together. And so we will also be sending out, yay, you're getting some applause in the chat. Good job, Bree. And we will, again, one more time, we'll be sending out a survey just to hear how we did, and you can provide us feedback. We'd love to hear about it. We do want to be we want to open lines of communication so we can help you best and help our cows best as well. And with that said, thank you so much for being here and have a good day. Okay, it looks like we've got some people who hung back. Let me
Mhm.